Emily Walker received Nathan's first message on an autumn afternoon, while she was standing on a small wooden chair in the backyard of her blue-gray house, both hands reaching up to hook a string of warm yellow lights along the porch roof for a weekend dinner with a few new friends. October in Seattle rarely came down in hard rain. It was damp, cold, and slow, as if the entire city had been wrapped in a thin layer of silver mist. The maple trees at the end of the street had already turned a deep red, their leaves scattered in patches across the sidewalk, and Emily's backyard still smelled of wet soil and rosemary because she had trimmed the little bushes beside the fence that morning. The house was not large. It had only 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, a living room just big enough for a beige sofa, a bookshelf, and a coffee table she had bought from a second-hand store and painted herself. But to Emily, it was the architecture of her survival. It was not the dream house young people sketch in their imagination. It was not the place someone had once promised to grow old with her. It was the house she had rented first, then slowly bought back piece by piece after years of paying debts, working extra hours, saving money, learning how to fix a leaking faucet, paint walls, change locks, and sleep alone during those first nights when every small sound reminded her of the old house where her marriage had slowly turned into a woman she could barely recognize. That afternoon, she was getting ready to welcome a group of people she had not had 5 years earlier. Maya, a former coworker who had become her closest friend. Ruth, the widowed neighbor who often brought her sourdough bread. Daniel and his wife from her pottery class. And Caleb, the gentle man who had entered her life not like a storm, not like some grand, cinematic destiny, but like a soft light being switched on in a room she had once thought she would never want anyone to enter again. Caleb was coming early to help her roast vegetables and hang the rest of the lights. She had prepared a pot of pumpkin soup, marinated chicken with lemon and thyme, and turned on a quiet jazz playlist. On the patio table lay a cream-colored tablecloth and 6 mismatched plates she loved, because each one carried a different little scar. Her new life was not perfect, but it had rhythm. There were morning walks through the mist. There was steady work at a small interior design office, where people actually asked for her opinion, instead of simply asking her to take notes. There were friends who did not look at her as Nathan Walker's ex-wife. There was a man who did not make her perform the role of someone easier to love, more interesting, gentler, less troublesome. And it was right there in the middle of those small, carefully rebuilt things that the phone on the patio table vibrated. Just one short buzz, mixed with the wind and the rustle of dry leaves. But her body recognized it before her eyes even reached the screen. Not because she was still waiting. She had stopped waiting a long time ago, or at least she thought she had. But old wounds have their own memory. She stepped down from the chair, wiped her hands on her jeans, and picked up the phone. The number was not saved under a name, but she knew it anyway. 10 years ago, she had known that number by heart, the way she knew her own breathing. 5 years after the divorce, she had deleted his name from her contacts, blocked him and unblocked him, unblocked him and blocked him again. Changed phones, changed habits, even tried to change the way her heart reacted to unknown messages. And yet just seeing the last 3 digits made her throat tight. The message on the screen said, "Can you meet me? I think we need to talk." Emily stood still beneath the porch roof, the unfinished string of lights hanging loosely over the railing, the wind making the bulbs tap gently against one another with tiny clinks like teeth against glass. Nathan, her ex-husband, the man who had once made her believe she was too sensitive, too hard to love, too ordinary, too much in need of fixing, too lucky to have him. The man who had left after 12 years of marriage in a voice as casual as canceling a dentist appointment. Then spent the years afterward knowing exactly how to slip one hand through the old door whenever she began to close it. Emily did not answer. She only watched the screen go dark, then light up again. The second message came less than a minute later. "I miss you." Those 4 words should have been small. They should have been too late. They should no longer have had the right to do anything to her. But they fell into the quiet backyard of her new house like a stone thrown into water that had only just begun to settle. Emily stood there for a very long time, not crying, not breathing hard, only feeling an old door opening inside her stomach. And behind it were the smell of the old house, the sound of Nathan sighing, his soft but sharp sentences, and the version of herself who used to sit waiting for his phone to light up as if she were waiting for a verdict on her own worth. Nathan Walker had once entered Emily's life like the kind of man who made a woman believe she had been chosen out of a crowd. He was tall, handsome in a way that seemed effortless, with gray-blue eyes that looked straight at the person in front of him as if, for those few seconds, no one else in the room mattered. When they met, Emily was 24, working as a project assistant at a small architecture firm in Portland. Her hair cut to her shoulders, usually wearing oversized sweaters and white sneakers, often apologizing before offering her opinion. Nathan was 30 then, an account manager at an advertising firm, quick with words, easy with laughter, always able to make an ordinary story sound like a fascinating secret. He met her at a mutual friend's birthday party. Emily remembered that night with painful clarity. The yellow light in the cramped apartment, the smell of cold pizza, someone laughing too loudly in the kitchen, Nathan standing beside an old bookshelf with a beer in his hand, asking what she was reading. He had not asked just to start a conversation and forget her answer. He looked at the novel in her hand, mentioned a minor character few people remembered, then said he had always liked people who noticed details. Emily, who had spent most of her life feeling like someone who noticed too much, suddenly felt as if that might be a virtue. In the first months, Nathan loved her with an intensity that made her dizzy. He texted her in the morning, "Don't forget breakfast. You skip meals when you're busy." He appeared outside her office with the exact coffee she liked. He told her she had sad but intelligent eyes, that she made him want to slow down, that being with her made him feel like he did not have to perform so much. Emily believed him. She had always believed men who told her they saw something special in her, because until then, she herself had never been sure that something special existed. Nathan proposed after 2 years on the Oregon coast, on a day so windy that her hair kept blowing across her face, while he laughed and said, "Perfect. Nothing fake can survive weather like this." She said yes, crying, letting him hold her between the sound of waves and wind, believing it was the beginning of a mature and courageous love. But their marriage did not collapse in one explosion. It shrank little by little, and Emily shrank with it. Nathan did not hit her, did not throw things, did not scream every night. If he had, perhaps other people would have seen it more easily, and perhaps Emily herself could have named it sooner. Nathan was subtler. He commented on the dress she wore before a party. "That one is fine, but the blue one makes you look less tired." He read the presentation she had prepared and said, "Good idea, you just tend to talk too long. People will lose patience." He laughed when she was hurt because he had forgotten a weekend plan. "You're so sensitive. I changed the schedule, I didn't abandon you." If she objected, he would raise his hands as if surrendering. "I'm just giving feedback. Am I not allowed to be honest with you?" Some sentences sounded like jokes at first, then over the years became iron bars around her self-worth. "No one else would put up with you the way I do. You're lucky you have me, honestly. You make everything so heavy. I love you, but sometimes you make loving you exhausting." He said those things while washing dishes, while driving, while lying on the sofa watching TV, in a voice that sounded more tired than cruel, which made it almost impossible for Emily to react, without looking exactly like the woman he said she was. If she cried, he sighed, "Here we go again." If she went quiet, he said, "See, now you're punishing me with silence." If she tried to explain how she felt, he said, "I don't have the energy to turn everything into a therapy session." She learned to swallow sentences before speaking them, to choose clothes through Nathan's eyes, to tell stories more quickly, to ask herself whether she was being annoying before calling him. 12 years of marriage turned her into a woman who constantly studied other people's faces, to know whether she was allowed to exist comfortably. And Nathan, though sometimes tender, though there were days when he truly made her laugh, always held the higher place in the air between them. He was the one who decided what was reasonable, what was too much, what was worth being sad about, and what was just her overthinking. Nathan needed Emily weak not because he hated her completely, but because when she was weak, he could always be the generous one who had stayed. That generosity was his throne. The night Nathan said he wanted a divorce, heavy rain beat against the dining room windows of the house they had bought together in Tacoma like fingers tapping over and over. Emily had just finished making the mushroom risotto Nathan liked, even though she had worked 10 hours that day and had had a headache since afternoon. He came home late, his coat wet, his hair damp, his face tired but not panicked. During dinner, he ate a few spoonfuls, then set his fork down. "I think we should talk." Emily remembered the feeling so clearly that years later, whenever she heard someone say that line in a movie, her stomach still clenched. She looked at him, her hands still wrapped around her glass of water. "About what?" Nathan looked down at his plate, as if what he was about to say saddened him but not enough to make him lose control. I don't think we should keep doing this. There was no other woman in the official story, no scandal, no final screaming fight, only Nathan saying he had tried, that they had become different people, that Emily deserved someone more suited to your emotional needs. A sentence that sounded so kind she did not know how to be angry at. She asked, "How long have you been thinking about this?" He said, "Long enough." She asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He sighed, "Because every time I say something, you fall apart. I didn't want to turn this into another crisis." That sentence, like all his others, placed his silence on the shoulders of her reaction. He had not told her because she was too difficult. He was leaving because she was too much. He did not admit to cheating, did not admit cruelty, only presented himself as a man exhausted from loving a woman who needed to be loved too correctly. When she cried so hard she could barely breathe, he stood up, walked around the table, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said the sentence she would never forget. "I think you'll be okay. You're used to enduring things." It was not comfort. It was a sentence. He knew she endured well, so he gave himself permission to hurt her more. After the divorce, Emily nearly disappeared from her own life. The first apartment she rented after leaving the house was on the 3rd floor of an old building in South Seattle, its window facing a parking lot and a leaning pine tree. That winter was long and damp. She went to work, came home, ate canned soup, watched TV shows she could not remember, and slept on a mattress on the floor because she did not have the strength to choose a bed frame. Most of their mutual friends disappeared politely. Some said they did not want to take sides. Some invited both her and Nathan to the same gathering, then seemed surprised when she did not come. Some still followed Nathan online, liking photos of him hiking, drinking beer with coworkers, smiling beside a new group of friends, then messaging Emily, "Hope you're okay." She was not okay. She checked Nathan's social media like someone touching a bruise, just to make sure it still hurt. She looked to see whether he was dating, whether he was sad, whether he had posted anything that hinted at her. She wondered whether if she had been less sensitive, happier, neater, more interesting, better at staying quiet at the right times, he might have stayed. Every time she began to have a decent day, Nathan appeared with a message just soft enough to pull her back. "Hope you're okay. Saw something that reminded me of you. No one knows me like you did." Never clear enough to mean he wanted to come back, but enough that she could not move forward without looking over her shoulder. Once, 6 months after the divorce, Nathan asked to meet her at their old coffee shop. He arrived in a gray coat, looking thinner, his eyes slightly tired, and Emily's heart betrayed her by beating fast the way it had when they first fell in love. He said he missed certain things between them. He asked whether she was seeing anyone. He said sometimes he came home to the silence and thought of her. Emily sat across from him, both hands around a latte that had gone cold, trying not to ask what she truly wanted to ask because she was afraid of the answer. At last, she still asked, "What do you want, Nathan?" He looked out the window, where rain slid down the glass in long streaks. "I don't know. I just don't want us to become strangers. But you're the one who left." He turned back to her, his face just sad enough. "I didn't leave everything." That sentence kept her for 3 more months. He did not come back. He did not disappear completely. He simply kept her at a distance, where she was still looking toward him. Emily once canceled a first date with a kind man who worked in the same building because Nathan had texted, "Maybe next week I'll want to talk seriously." The next week, Nathan said he was busy. Then he went silent. Then he sent her a picture of an old song that had once been theirs. She cried in the bathroom, hating herself for letting him do that to her. But when someone has been trained for years to use another person's reaction as the measure of her own worth, leaving that measuring stick behind does not happen through logic. It takes exhaustion, and Emily had to become almost completely exhausted before she began saving herself. The day Emily truly began turning back toward herself was not a beautiful one. It was a cold, rainy Wednesday afternoon in Dr. Marla Chen's beige therapy office, where a snake plant sat on a shelf. A box of tissues rested on the low table, and the round wall clock ticked so quietly it felt almost polite. Emily had started therapy after one morning, when she could not get out of bed even though she was not sick. She had lain there staring at the ceiling, phone in her hand, waiting for a message from Nathan after 3 weeks of his silence, and suddenly saw with painful clarity that she had turned her post-divorce life into the waiting room of a man who had never promised to arrive. In that session, she told Marla about how Nathan kept coming back and disappearing, about the vague messages, about the way he asked whether she was dating anyone but never said he wanted her. about the feeling that if she truly moved on, she would be betraying something that had not been properly buried. Marla listened for a long time, then asked, "When Nathan comes back, do you feel he is coming back because he loves you or because he can sense you moving out of his reach?" The question did not make Emily burst into tears right away. It made her silent, because inside that silence, dozens of moments aligned themselves. The message that came right after she posted a hiking photo with coworkers. The call that came after a mutual friend said she looked healthier. The coffee invitation after she changed her hair. The sudden tenderness each time she began to stop texting first. Nathan did not come back when she needed him most. He came back when she began not to need him. That truth did not make her stop loving him immediately. It only stripped her old love of its holiness. It became a pattern, a cycle. He hurt her left, let her crawl back to her feet, then returned just as she was nearly standing to remind her that he could still make her knees weak. Marla did not tell her to block Nathan forever. She only said, try 30 days of no contact, not to test him, to hear what is still inside you when his voice is not interrupting. Emily blocked Nathan that night. It sounded small, but to her it felt like stepping off the edge of a bridge. For the first 30 days, freedom did not feel like freedom. It felt like withdrawal. She picked up her phone dozens of times, wanting to unblock him just to see whether he had messaged. She imagined him angry, imagined him hurt, imagined him thinking she was cold. Some nights she sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the refrigerator, crying because she did not know whether she missed Nathan or missed the feeling of having someone to wait for. But day by day, the noise in her head slowly softened. She began walking in the mornings around her neighborhood. At first only 10 minutes because it was cold, then 20, then 40. She reconnected with Maya, an old coworker who had drifted away from the mutual friend group, because she never liked the way Nathan spoke to Emily. Maya did not ask, "Why are you only calling now?" She only hugged Emily and said, "I'm here." Emily took a community cooking class because she realized that for 12 years she had mostly cooked Nathan's favorite meals instead of what she wanted. She bought a mustard yellow dress Nathan would have said made her skin look dull, wore it to the farmer's market, and discovered that no one died because of the color yellow. She repainted her living room, changed the sofa, threw out the wine glasses Nathan had chosen because we need to look more grown-up. She began sleeping more deeply. Not every night, not like magic, but there were mornings when she woke up, and Nathan was not her first thought. On the 31st day, she unblocked him not as an invitation, but as a test of reality. Her phone immediately showed the history. 17 missed calls, 6 voicemails, 11 messages. At first they were gentle, "I just want to know you're okay." Then confused, "Are you really cutting me out of your life?" Then reproachful, "I didn't think you were this cold." Then the familiar line, "After everything we had." Emily sat on the edge of her bed, reading each one, and for the first time she did not find it romantic. She saw a man panicking because the door he believed would always remain cracked had closed without asking his permission. The first twist of her life was not that Nathan still loved her. The twist was that Nathan could not tolerate losing access. The night Nathan came to her house, winter was almost there. Emily was watching an old movie, wrapped in a wool blanket, a cup of peppermint tea on the table, when the doorbell rang. She was not expecting anyone. Caleb had not yet entered her life. Maya had gone home after dinner. Ruth never came by late without calling. Emily opened the doorbell camera app, and for one instant, her entire body was dragged backward into the time of the old house. Nathan stood on the porch, black coat, wet hair from the rain, face slightly hollowed, hands in his pockets. He looked into the camera as though he knew she was watching. He said. His voice through the small speaker was distorted, but it was still the voice that had once been able to soften her. "I just want to talk." Emily did not answer right away. She stood in the living room, only a few meters from the door, listening to her own heart pound. Part of her wanted to open it, not because she believed him, because she remembered what it felt like to open the door to someone who had once been home. Years do not vanish just because a decision is right. They stood behind her, tugging lightly at her sleeve. Nathan knocked again, not hard. "I know you're home." She pressed the button to speak. "Nathan, go home." He lowered his head and smiled sadly. "Are you really going to leave me standing out here?" That sentence struck the old place in her, the fear of being cruel. But this time, she looked around her living room. The sofa she had chosen, the lamp she had bought, the small paintings from the art market. This room had watched her cry, sleep, stand back up, and learn how to live without him. It did not owe him an open door. "Yes," she said. Nathan lifted his face, his eyes searching the camera. "You've changed." Emily placed her hand on the edge of the table, pressing her nails into the wood. "I've been trying." He was silent for a second. Then his voice changed, no longer purely sad. There was a small edge of old power in it. "I know you're seeing someone." Emily went cold, not because he knew, but because the sentence felt like an old hand settling at the back of her neck. She had not met Caleb yet, but she had recently gone for coffee with a man from her cooking class. It was nothing serious, but Nathan knew through someone, or guessed, or simply threw the line out to see how she would react. "That isn't your business," she said. He gave a low laugh. "After 12 years, I'm not allowed to ask if you're okay. You're not asking if I'm okay. You're asking whether I still belong to your sadness." The sentence left her before she could think. Outside, Nathan went still. For the first time in years, she had said something he could not immediately redefine. He lowered his head and rubbed his face. "I don't recognize you anymore." Emily looked at his image on the screen, this man who had once known exactly how to make her apologize for protecting herself. "Neither do I," she said, "but I'm learning." She closed the app. Nathan stayed outside for another 10 minutes. She knew because his shadow remained on the glass door, because the motion alert appeared twice more. She sat on the sofa, did not restart the movie, both hands wrapped around her cold cup of tea. When he finally left, she did not feel victorious. She trembled, she cried. She wanted to call him and apologize, but she did not call. That was her first victory. Not that it did not hurt, but that she could hurt and still not open the door. Caleb appeared not long after, but not like a man entering the story to save the heroine from her past. Emily met him in a winter cooking class at the Ballard Community Center, where she had signed up because Maya said she needed to do something that had nothing to do with therapy, work, or Nathan. The class was about making fresh pasta. Emily arrived 10 minutes late, her hair damp from rain, her coat wet, her mood sour because earlier that day she had received a short email from Nathan. "I see you're trying to prove something. Hope you know what you're doing." She had deleted the email, but the sentence clung to her like the smell of smoke on fabric. Caleb was standing at the next table, tall, broad-shouldered, brown hair faintly silvered at the roots, sleeves rolled up, trying to roll out dough that kept tearing. He watched her struggle with her bag and said, "If you also have no idea what you're doing, we can form an organized failure team." Emily laughed before she had time to defend herself. The sound surprised her. Caleb did not ask whether she had a husband, did not flirt too obviously, did not try to make her feel special right away. He told her he was a high school history teacher, divorced for 3 years with a 14-year-old daughter who lived with her mother in Spokane, and that he had signed up for the class because his daughter said he only knew how to cook brown food. Emily said she worked at a design office, had been divorced, and was learning how to okay things that were not old meals. Caleb only nodded, not asking for more with the hungry eyes of someone who liked wounded women because they made him feel heroic. He said, "Then today we learn a new dish." With Caleb, Emily did not feel the electric shock Nathan had once given her. There was no anxious thrill of lowering herself, no question of whether she was interesting enough to keep his attention, no silences she felt forced to fill. At first, that peace made her suspicious. She had once thought love had to have a strong pull, had to make the heart race, had to make her check her phone, had to contain a little fear of loss. Caleb was slow. After class, he texted, "I really enjoyed talking with you. If you'd like coffee sometime, I'd like that. If not, I'll see you in class next week." No pressure, no demand for an immediate answer. When they went for coffee, he asked what she liked to read and actually listened. When she said she needed to go slowly, he did not turn that into a challenge to conquer. "Slow is a good speed," he said. "A lot of important things get damaged because people rush to prove they're important." Emily began seeing Caleb every week. They walked around Green Lake. They ate ramen in a small restaurant where steam fogged the windows. He helped her hang shelves and did not laugh when she measured wrong. He did not comment on her clothes unless she asked. And when she did ask, he did not answer in a controlling way. "I like how comfortable you look in it," he said about the yellow dress Nathan would have hated even though he had never seen it. Emily did not fall in love with Caleb right away. She also did not want to use him as proof that she was done hurting. But beside him, her body learned a strange lesson. A man could be quiet without punishing her. He could be busy without disappearing. He could disagree without making her feel stupid. Caleb was proof that love did not have to make someone smaller. And perhaps that proof, quietly and without drama, was what awakened Nathan from a distance. Nathan saw Emily and Caleb, through a mutual friend's social media. It was a completely accidental photo from Maya's birthday dinner at a warm pizza place in Fremont. Emily was sitting near the end of the table, laughing, her head tilted slightly toward Caleb, not touching him but clearly at ease. Caleb was looking at her in the photo not like she was a victory, but like she was someone he enjoyed seeing happy. A friend tagged the whole group. Nathan did not like it. He did not comment, but that Sunday morning, Emily received a handwritten letter in her mailbox. Not an email, not a text, a cream-colored envelope. Nathan's handwriting slanted, neat, and so familiar she had to place it on the kitchen table and stare at it for a long time before opening. In the letter, Nathan wrote beautifully. He always wrote beautifully when he wanted to be believed. He said he had thought a lot about them, that he had been selfish, that seeing her laugh beside someone else made him realize he still loved her, that no one understood him the way Emily once had, that there are mistakes people only recognize when it is too late. But if the other person still has even a little kindness left, maybe too late does not have to be the end. Emily read the letter twice, then a third time. The words she had once waited years to hear were finally there on paper. And the cruel thing was that they still carried weight. Not because she fully believed them, but because some part of her had been hungry for those words for so long that when they came, late as they were, false as they might be, her body still recognized them the way hunger recognizes the smell of bread. Caleb came over that afternoon to bring her a book about gardening, because she had said she wanted to plant tulips. Emily told him about the letter, her voice shaking. He did not get angry. He did not look offended. He sat at her kitchen chair, both hands around a cup of tea, and listened to the end. "Do you want to meet him?" Caleb asked. Emily looked at him, and the peace inside that question hurt almost more than she could bear. Nathan would have asked it differently. Nathan would have said, "After everything, you're still thinking about meeting him?" Or, "I thought I meant more than that." Caleb only asked what she wanted. "I don't know," she said. "Part of me thinks if I don't meet him, I'll always wonder." Caleb nodded. "Then meet in public. Tell Maya where you'll be. And don't go because you feel like you have to prove anything to me." "You're not angry?" Caleb looked at her for a long time. "I don't want to become another man who makes you manage his feelings before your own." That sentence stayed with Emily all night. It made her understand that Caleb was not fighting over her like a prize. He allowed her to stand at the center of her own life. And because of that, she saw even more clearly how long Nathan had pulled her away from that center. Emily agreed to meet Nathan once, at the same old coffee shop where they had met 6 months after the divorce. The place was almost unchanged. Exposed brick walls, dark wooden tables, a window looking out onto a rain-wet street, the smell of espresso and waffles, an old sunken sofa in the corner. She arrived early, chose a table near the door, not their old table. She texted Maya the location and time. She wore a dark blue sweater, jeans, and very little makeup. Before going in, she sat in her car for 5 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, reminding herself that meeting Nathan was not a trial where he got to decide whether she was lovable or not. Nathan arrived on time. He looked softer than before. His hair was a little longer, his shave not completely clean, his coat gray wool. When he saw her, his face changed in a very practiced way. Relief, pain, love, regret, all just enough for someone who had once loved him to believe she could trust. "You look beautiful," he said. Emily nodded. "Thank you." He sat down and ordered black coffee, as always. A few seconds of silence passed. Nathan looked at her hand. There was no ring, of course, but Emily saw him look as if he still hoped for some trace that belonged to him. "Everything I wrote in the letter was true," he said. "I know I don't have the right to ask you to believe me right away." "What do you want, Nathan?" The old question returned, but her voice was different this time. Not a plea to be chosen, a demand for definition. Nathan swallowed. "I want to try again." She looked at him. "What have you changed?" He blinked. "I realized I was wrong. Specifically how? I didn't appreciate you." "In what way?" Nathan drew back slightly, as if he had not expected his apology to be asked for bones. I took you for granted. I was selfish. Have you gone to therapy?" He looked out the window. "I've thought about it." "Nathan," he turned back, "I don't need a therapist to know I miss you." Emily felt her heart ache, but it did not dissolve. "Missing me is not the same as changing." He went silent. She continued, each sentence like a step over glass. "Do you want to come back because you love me, or because you can't stand that I no longer need you?" Nathan's eyes darkened. "That's not fair, maybe, but I need to ask." He placed his hand on the table, palm open. "I miss us." Emily looked at that hand, the hand that had held hers on the coast, the hand that had pulled a suitcase out of their house when he left, the hand that had sent vague messages to keep her waiting. Or do you miss who I was when I was still waiting for you? Nathan looked up, struck in the exact place he did not want touched. You sound like your therapist. Maybe because I finally have someone helping me hear myself again. He gave a sad laugh, but beneath it was irritation now. I just can't watch you build a life with someone else. The sentence fell between them and exposed itself. Nathan seemed to realize it too late. He began to say something else, but Emily had heard enough. He had not said, I can't live without you. He had not said, I love you so much that I want to learn how not to hurt you. He said he could not watch her with someone else. The center was still his eyes, his loss, his place in the story. Emily felt a strange lightness, painful but light, like a room that had been fogged for years, suddenly having a window open. You don't miss me, she said very softly. You miss the right to hurt me. Nathan's face hardened. That is a cruel thing to say. No, the cruel thing was leaving, then coming back every time I learned how to live without you. She stood. Nathan caught her wrist, not hard, but enough to make the past flare through her body. Don't go. For 1 second, the coffee shop disappeared, and there was only his hand and all the years she had stayed because of that sentence. Emily looked down at her wrist. Let go. Nathan released her immediately, perhaps because he saw her eyes. I'm sorry, she picked up her coat. I loved the man you pretended to be. It took me years to forgive myself for believing in him. Nathan's face went pale. So this is really it? Emily looked through the window. The rain was still falling, but lighter now. No, it ended the day you left. Today is just the day I stopped keeping the door open. She stepped outside, cold wind hitting her face, and for the first time in years, she did not turn around to see whether Nathan was watching her. But she knew he was. She could feel his gaze like a hand that could no longer reach her. After that meeting, Nathan did not collapse quietly. He began losing control in the way men with soft power often lose control. Not with an explosion, but through many cracks spreading into the community around her. He messaged mutual friends, saying Emily wasn't herself anymore, that Caleb seemed to have too much influence, that he was worried she was being pulled into a relationship before she had truly healed. He posted vague, sorrowful lines. Some people rewrite history because the truth asks too much of them. You can love someone and still lose them to someone who arrived at the right time. People who had once known them began messaging Emily in voices that did not ask directly but were full of curiosity. Is everything okay? Nathan seems really sad. Who is Caleb? Worst of all, Nathan called Emily's mother, a woman in her 60s living in Spokane who had always carried guilt over not being able to save her daughter from the pain of the divorce. He told her he was worried Emily was changing too quickly, that she had cut him out coldly, that he only wanted to make sure she was not being pulled away by someone from the people who truly knew her. Emily's mother called in tears. Are you sure Caleb isn't pushing you into anything? Emily stood in the kitchen, a knife in her hand as she cut carrots, feeling an old anger rise. Nathan did not respect her decision. He respected her only when she still belonged to the pain he controlled. Once she stepped outside that range, he did not call her strong. He called her influenced. He could not believe an independent Emily might choose on her own not to need him. Therefore, someone else had to be controlling her. This was the fourth twist, but also the oldest pattern. If he could not enter her new piece, he would try to make it look suspicious. Caleb heard about it one evening at Emily's house. She told him everything, angry and ashamed, as if Nathan's interference in her new life were somehow her fault. Caleb sat at the kitchen table under the yellow light, a bowl of soup cooling in front of him. He did not speak right away. At last he asked, "Do you want me to step back?" Emily looked at him. What? Not because Nathan is right. He isn't. But I don't want my presence to make you feel like you have to fight two battles at once. If you need space to deal with the past, I'll respect that. Emily burst into tears before she could stop herself. Because Caleb did not compete. He did not turn her pain into a place to prove his masculinity. He did not say, I won't let him win. He placed her, not himself, at the center of the question. She wiped her tears. I don't want you to go, but I also don't want to use you to prove I've forgotten Nathan. Caleb nodded. I don't need you to prove you've forgotten him. Emily looked toward the window, where her reflection and Caleb's were faint in the glass. I don't want to forget the past, she said. I want it to stop deciding my life. That night, after Caleb left, Emily sent Nathan one sentence. We need to meet one last time. I'll come get the box of my things from the house on Saturday. After that, don't contact me again. Nathan replied almost immediately, I know you still care if you're willing to come. Emily looked at the sentence and did not answer. This time, she was not going to explain. She was going to end it in the place where the old version of herself had once been unable to leave. The old house in Tacoma still stood there, its exterior paint a little more faded, a few boards in the front fence needing replacement. The rose bush Emily had planted beside the porch cut back too harshly and not blooming. Nathan had stayed there for a while after the divorce and then listed it for sale, but it had not sold yet. When Emily drove up, the sky was gray and cold, the wind sending dry leaves skittering along the walkway. She sat in the car for a few minutes, looking at the dark red front door she herself had chosen because Nathan had said gray was too safe. She remembered the day they moved in, Nathan lifting her over the threshold as a joke, both of them laughing, boxes stacked in the living room, pizza eaten on the floor. The future seeming so wide that neither of them could have imagined becoming trapped inside. Now the house felt like a body left behind after the soul had gone, but it still held the old smell. Nathan opened the door before she could knock. He wore a navy sweater and socks, as if he had deliberately chosen a familiar, casual look. "Come in," he said. Emily crossed the threshold, the smell of old wood, dust, coffee, and a trace of familiar laundry detergent struck her harder than she expected. The living room was emptier than before, several pictures removed, pale rectangles left behind on the walls. The scratch on the floor near the kitchen door was still there, from the day they had dragged in the new dining table, and Nathan had been irritated because Emily had measured wrong, saying, "You're always so confident about things you're not actually sure about." She had laughed awkwardly and apologized. Now, looking at the scratch, she did not see a measuring mistake. She saw an afternoon when she had learned one more way to become smaller. Nathan led her to the office. "I put your box in here." The cardboard box sat on the desk. A few books, old photos, the wool scarf her mother had knitted, a framed picture of them in Oregon that she did not remember leaving behind. Emily did not touch the frame. Nathan stood by the door watching her. "The house feels so empty," he said. "Yeah, I still think of you in the kitchen. Remember that time you burned the apple pie?" She remembered. She also remembered how he had joked with friends for years about Emily's baking disaster, until she had stopped making apple pie, even though she once loved it. "I remember," she said. He stepped closer. "Caleb doesn't know those stories." "No, I know you better than anyone." Emily placed a book in the box and turned to him. "No, you know the version of me who lived to keep you comfortable." The sentence silenced him. He looked at her, and the fake softness was no longer fully intact. Something tired, irritated, and more honest showed through. "I didn't think you would actually be happy without me," he said. Maybe he had not meant to say it out loud. Maybe it was the truth falling out between his strategies. But it fell, and now it lay in the room like a key. Emily looked at him, everything assembled inside her. He had left when she still loved him so much she could hardly stand. He texted when she began breathing again. He called when she began dating. He came to her door when she stopped answering. He said he missed her when he saw someone else cherishing her. He called friends, called her mother, tried to make her new peace look like an illness. His pain was not that he had lost Emily. His pain was that he was no longer the center of hers. "You don't want me," Emily said slowly. "You want me to still want you." Nathan did not answer, and his silence was the truest answer he had ever given her. She took the box and walked back to the living room. Nathan followed. "Emily, that's not what I meant." "Yes, it means exactly what it sounds like." She set the box down for a moment and took the last key to the old house from her coat pocket. The key she had kept for years, not because she needed to enter the house, but because some part of her had not yet been able to close the final symbol. She placed it on the console table beside the door. The sound of metal touching wood was very small, but Nathan looked down as though he had heard a door slam. "I don't need this key anymore." He stepped forward. "Don't do that." "I did too many things to avoid hurting you," she said, "and every time I disappeared a little more." Nathan shook his head, truly frightened for the first time. "You don't love me anymore?" Emily looked at the man who had once been her son, her weather, her measuring stick, and her wound. The answer did not come from hatred. It came from an old sorrow. "I don't abandon myself to love you anymore." Nathan stayed where he was. No sentence of his was quick enough to catch her. Emily lifted the box and opened the door. Cold wind rushed in. She walked down the porch steps and placed the box in the back seat of her car. When she sat behind the wheel, she cried. Hard, sudden sobs, her forehead dropping to the steering wheel like someone who had just cut away a part of her own body that had gone rotten, but was still part of her body. Nathan stood in the doorway, growing smaller in the rearview mirror. She did not drive right away. She cried for the girl who had loved him on the Oregon coast, cried for the wife who made risotto the night he left, cried for the woman who had canceled a date because of a vague message, cried for the house, for the key, for every version of herself that had waited for him to choose her. Then she wiped her face, started the engine, and did not look back. The weeks afterward did not turn Emily into a completely new person. That is what no one says enough about leaving the past behind. A door can close in a single moment, but the echo of the old room follows you for a long time. Nathan sent a few more messages, at first pleading, "I said the wrong thing. Please," then angry, "You're letting someone new make you forget 12 years. Then wounded, "I don't know who I am if you're not in my life." Emily did not answer. She sent screenshots to Maya, so someone else could help keep her from replying on weeknights. Caleb did not ask every day whether Nathan had messaged again. He was simply there without taking up too much space. One evening, Emily told him she wanted to go more slowly. Not backward, but slowly. Caleb nodded, though she saw a little pain in his eyes. "I'm here," he said, "but you don't have to run to me to prove you've left him." That sentence made her trust Caleb more than any grand promise could have. She returned to therapy. Marla said healing was not about no longer remembering. It was about remembering without turning memory into an order. Emily learned that slowly. Some days she walked past a coffee shop Nathan had liked, and her heart still tight. Some nights she dreamed of him calling her name in the old house, and woke with tears on her face. Some mornings she saw a text from Caleb saying, "Hope you have a good day." And part of her panicked because steady kindness felt too unfamiliar, as if peace could not be trusted because it had not yet had time to hurt her. But the difference was that she no longer called Nathan to explain the pain. She let it pass through her like old rain. Nathan gradually stopped messaging, not because he understood, perhaps because, at last, the unopened door had left him without a stay. The mutual friends quieted too. Some understood, some did not. Emily's mother took time to stop saying, "Nathan was still part of your life." Emily did not argue. She only said, "Yes, but not every part of my life needs a key to my future." Winter passed slowly. She planted tulips in the backyard, unsure whether they would grow. She learned to make apple pie again. The first one burned at the edges, the second was better. When the pie burned, Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table reading, smelled the smoke, and gave a very soft laugh. Emily froze for a second, waiting for the old joke, the old remark, the old way a small mistake became a flaw in her character. Caleb only stood, opened the window, and said, "It smells a little tragic, but vanilla ice cream can still save it." Emily laughed, then cried. Caleb did not ask why she was crying over pie. He only took a spoon and scooped the unburned part onto a plate. Those small moments did not heal her completely. They taught her that the present did not have to repeat the past. It was a very slow and very expensive lesson. Spring arrived as soft light over the fence behind Emily's house. The tulips actually grew, though half had been dug up by squirrels. On a Saturday afternoon in late April, she hung lights along the porch again, this time not trembling because of an old message, but getting ready for Maya's birthday dinner. The backyard was full of laughter, the smell of grilled chicken, damp soil, and apple pie that had not burned this time. Ruth brought bread. Daniel told a story about the new dog he had adopted. Caleb sat near the edge of the table, not close enough to claim her, not distant enough to pretend he did not belong there. He was talking with Maya about a local history book, occasionally glancing at Emily with eyes that quietly asked whether she was okay, without pulling her out of her own conversation. Emily stood at the kitchen door, a towel in her hand, watching the backyard glow beneath the string of yellow lights. There was nothing in the scene that looked like a dramatic victory. No swelling music, no Nathan standing outside the door looking regretful, no image of her taking Caleb's arm like a prize for surviving. There were only real people, mismatched plates, laughter that did not need to perform, and a small house where she did not have to shrink in order to be kept. Her phone lay on the kitchen shelf. Sometimes there was still an old reflex when it vibrated, but that day it was silent. Nathan had not messaged in months. Perhaps he had found someone else to reflect back his importance. Perhaps he still told people Emily had changed because of Caleb. Perhaps in the old house, if it had not yet sold, he walked past the scratch on the floor and remembered what she had said. Emily did not need to know. That did not mean he had no effect left on her. Some wounds do not disappear. They simply stop driving. Caleb stepped into the kitchen, carrying 2 empty glasses. "Are you okay?" he asked. Emily looked at him. From Nathan, that question had usually meant, Are you about to make everything difficult? From Caleb, it was only a question. I'm okay, she said, then thought again. Not completely, but truly. Caleb nodded as though that answer was enough. He did not immediately embrace her, did not turn the moment into romance. He only placed the glasses in the sink and touched her shoulder lightly as he passed. A touch that did not require her to become anything. Emily looked out at the yard. She did not need Nathan to hurt in order to feel strong, but she knew her calm refusal had hurt him more than all the times she had cried. Because for the first time, he was no longer the one deciding when the story ended. He had come back the moment she finally moved on, not because he loved her better, but because he could not stand seeing her whole without him in the center of it. And Emily's true freedom did not begin with Caleb, nor with a new love. It began at the door she did not open, with the key she placed down, with the final answer she gave in front of the old house. She would no longer abandon herself to love a man who had grown used to watching her disappear. Night deepened. Her friends called her outside to cut the cake. Emily turned off the kitchen light and stepped into the backyard. The porch lights trembled softly in the wind, little yellow reflections shining in her eyes. She had survived, but she had not returned unchanged. Some old softness was gone. The part of her that once believed everyone who came back deserved an open door. That longing was proof of love. That familiarity was the same as safe. That part was gone. In its place was something else, colder, firmer, less romantic, but far more true. The ability to stand before the past, see that it still hurt, and still choose not to return. Nathan had once believed Emily's door would always open, because he had been the one who left first. But in the end, the moment that hurt him most was not the time she cried, not the time she begged, not the time she asked whether he still loved her. It was the time she left him outside a door he had once believed he could open whenever he wanted, then quietly went back into the small, brightly lit house, where her life was no longer built around his absence.